with a degree in math and physics from St. Lawrence University, an engineering degree from Columbia University, and a law degree from the University of Colorado.
Whoa, wow.
Dick's career includes working for Ingersoll Rand as a sales engineer, practicing law in Tulsa, Oklahoma, part owner of the St. Louis Cardinals AAA team in Tulsa for 25 years,
Wow.
while being very active in the oil and gas business, organizing and managing 4 oil and gas exploration companies, collectively participating in over 20 wells. In 1980, Dick and his wife Katie moved to Sea Pines and then moved to Tide Point in 2016. In 1982, he organized and managed the Savannah Cardinals, a new single A team, which later became known as the Savannah Sandats. In early 1991, the Sonberg family purchased Island Water Sports, which became the largest water sports operator on the island, which he sold to the Salty Dog Company in 2012. Please join me in welcoming Dick Sonberg, who will tell us more about his exciting life experience.
Well, thank you for all coming. I guess you know who I am. And I was born in White Plains, New York on April 11. I think that I've gotten to the point where I'm now 93 years old. I gave a talk like this about 5 years ago when I was living here at Tide Point. I called it the entrepreneur because that's really what I've been for most of my life, is an entrepreneur. I've done a lot of different things. And I enjoyed that talk, but this one's going to be a little bit different. And it has some innuendos that are different from what you probably hear from a lot of the other speakers. I'm going to start out by giving you a short resume of a short story that I read several years ago. There was a young man about 30 years old who was walking along a dusty dirt road in western Oklahoma. It was very hot. And the town ahead of him was at least 10 miles away. And along comes another guy driving an automobile, about 30 years old. And he stops by the walker and says, "Hey bud, I'll give you a ride to the next town." And the walker says, "No thanks, I'll do it my way." And that's what this talk is going to be all about. I've done it my way. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. Thanks. Growing up in White Plains, originally we lived at the outskirts of town, and the school system had a one-room schoolhouse at the edge of White Plains that was very close to where we were living. And it had 1st through 6th grade. And Miss Honeywell was the teacher. They didn't have a kindergarten. So when I turned 5, which was when you supposedly started kindergarten, I told my mother, I said, I wanted to start school. So we went down and talked to Miss Honeywell. And at first she said, well, is it working? Yeah, sorry. She said, you have to wait till next year because there's no kindergarten and you are not old enough for 1st grade. And I said, I don't want to wait. I want to go to school. And I convinced her to do it my way. So I started school at the age of 5 in first grade, which put me a year ahead of myself throughout college, and it was not an impediment to my education. I became an entrepreneur at the age of 8. My family had a cottage on a lake, Peach Lake, which is about 35 miles north of White Plains. And we went there and spent the whole summer every year. And when I was 8, my brother was 10, we decided we needed to make some money to buy Coca-Cola and ice cream bars. So we convinced our father that we wanted to go into the worms for sale business. And what he would do at 9, he'd go up to the local golf course and collect the big night crawlers off the greens. And we kept them in a big wooden box. And we sold them to the local fishermen for 10 cents a dozen. And we got enough dimes to buy our Cokes and ice cream bars. That was the beginning of my entrepreneurship. In 7th grade, I did my next entrepreneurship. I took on a paper route, 250 papers, which I delivered every afternoon. It was an afternoon paper with my bike. And that kept me busy. And I did that for 3 years until I graduated from junior high school and was off to high school. I went to White Plains High School, which was a good high school, about 250 in each class. So it was sizable. And while in high school, I was the sports editor of the school paper. I played on the baseball team, third base and catcher. And we had a very good team. Our American Legion baseball team won the New York State Championship in 1949. And we played the championship game, on the Dreamer Fields at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. It was a great experience. And we won that game by, I think, 6-3 or something over Buffalo. So when it was time to go to college, I had graduated number 2 in my class, and so I could have gone to any of the Ivy League schools. Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, whatever. I decided I wanted to go to a smaller school. So I selected St. Lawrence University, which is up in the north country of New York State, up near the St. Lawrence River. It's a smaller liberal arts college, but highly regarded. And I started there majoring in math and physics. And something happened in my freshman year which was very, very unusual. As I said, I was a sports editor of the high school newspaper. And through a mutual friend, I was introduced to the fellow who, at St. Lawrence, was the sports editor of the college paper and sports director of the radio station. So he agreed to take me on, and I became an assistant sports editor and an assistant sports director of the paper and the radio station, and became really involved in that. St. Lawrence had a nationally recognized hockey team, and we traveled with that and broadcast the games back to the campus, so it was exciting. But anyway, in the spring of my freshman year, Bill Creasy, who was the sports editor, and 2 other guys did a prank that didn't go over well with the administration, and they were banned from further involvement in extracurricular activities on the campus. And as a freshman, I became the sports editor of the newspaper and sports director of the radio station, which was almost unheard of. So there I was, very involved in that activity of writing and talking. And I was majoring in math and physics. And at the end of my sophomore year, George Hazlitt, who was the professor of physics at St. Lawrence, and he had been appointed as my faculty mentor. And he called me into his office. He wanted to talk to me. And I thought, oh my God, what am I flunking? And he said, Dick, what are you going to do for a living when you get out of college? And I said, well, I'm thinking heavily of going into journalism because I think I'm doing a good job here on the campus, and it keeps me really active, and I like it. And he said, well, I think you're making a big mistake about that. He said, my observation is that journalists don't get paid that well. You are very good in math and physics. You can get a job as an engineer if you get an engineering degree, and you'll make a lot more money. And he said, we have here at St. Lawrence what we call a 3-2 program, engineering program. You go 3 years to St. Lawrence and major in math and physics or math and chemistry. And then you transfer to an engineering school and go 2 years of very concentrated studying of engineering. And at the end of 5 years, you get a degree from both. He said, I recommend you think seriously about doing this. Well, I got into my junior year that fall, and I did think about it a lot. And I finally decided that maybe Professor Hazlitt was right. And so I started getting prepared to go to an engineering school. The availability was MIT, RPI, or Columbia Engineering School. And Columbia was very close to my home in White Plains. I could commute to it. So I elected to go to engineering school at Columbia after my junior year at St. Lawrence. And I commuted down from White Plains every day on the train, which was a very quick ride, and then go home at night. And after about 3 or 4 months of doing that, I got a job driving cab when I got back to the railroad station. And there was a cab company, Central Cab, that had a franchise at the railroad station. White Plains was a commuter town, so in 3 hours, I could have about 15 rides of people taking them to their homes and make good tips. So that's what I did while I was at Columbia Engineering School. And I learned how to drive pretty good. So I graduated from Columbia in June of 1955. And also got my degree from St. Lawrence at the same time. And I had interviewed with several companies that spring, looking toward getting a job when I graduated. And I elected to go and work for Ingersoll Rand Company, which is a major company in the oil and gas equipment world. It manufactures big gas engines, pumps, compressors, all sorts of things that are used out in the oil fields and gas fields. And so I was hired by Ingersoll Rand and started working for them in June of 1955. And that was at their home office, which was at 11 Broadway in New York City. So I commuted still from White Plains to go down to work at 11 Broadway every day. And I did that for a couple of years. And in 1957, the head of the gas engine department called me in, Forrest Stewart, and he said, Dick, he said, we're going to transfer you to Tulsa, make you into a sales engineer. And I thought, boy, that's good. I want to be a sales engineer. That's why I came to work here. So they sent me down to Tulsa, and I moved down there lock, stock, and barrel. And I had a car, and I got a U-Haul truck or trailer, put it behind the car, and drove down Tulsa, Route 66 through Chicago. That was before any interstate, of course. And so there I was, working as a sales engineer in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I joined the First Presbyterian Church. I was a Presbyterian all my life. And I joined the collegiate group at that church. I obviously was out of college, but most of the people were kind of near my age, and I got along real well with them and made a lot of good friends. And one of them was a young lady by the name of Kathleen Wallace, who I started dating, and we enjoyed each other's company. And I think it started to get a little romantic. And then in 1959, spring of 1959, another person that I had met in Tulsa, Bob Spears, he was a headhunter. He helped companies find new employees for particular positions. And he knew about my background. I had met him at church and knew him fairly well and had lunch with him several times. He called me and asked me to have lunch with him. And he said, "Dick, I've got a job for you. There's a company up in Corry, Pennsylvania." I don't know if anybody ever known Corry, Pennsylvania. It's a little town. And there's a company there by the name of Ajax Ironworks. And he said, "Doc Castor is the owner and president of Ajax Ironworks. And he is about 78 years old and looking to retire. And he gave me the job of finding somebody to train and be his replacement." And I thought, my God, Dick Sonberg do this? And Bob assured me that he thought that I could accomplish what needed to be done. So I called Doc Castor on the phone 2 or 3 times and explained who I was and my background and all, and my experience with Ingersoll Rand. And he said, "Dick, we're going to take a chance on you. I want you to move up here and become our vice president." So that sounded like a pretty good deal to me. So that's what I did. Lock, stock, and barrel, I moved to Corry, Pennsylvania. I left Katie behind, actually. And that worked out pretty well from the standpoint that I got along very well with Doc Castor and the other people in Ajax, and was learning their business very quickly and feeling that I was probably able to handle the job of running that company. And then my father died in August of 1958. And I got a little inheritance from that. And strangely enough, one of the things I always wanted to do in my lifetime was be a lawyer. I wanted to go to law school and learn to be a lawyer. And I had the money now to do it. So I took the law school entrance exam in the fall of '58 and passed it, and applied to the law school in Boulder, Colorado, at the University of Colorado, and was accepted for the following year, which would be September of 1959. And that sounded very interesting to me. And finally, in the spring of 1959, I had to tell Doc Castor what I was up to. And he was understanding but upset. But I was bound and determined to do it my way. And that's what I was going to do, is go to law school. So I was up there in Corey, Pennsylvania, and there was a phone booth downtown. And I went in the phone booth one night and called Katie and explained what I was doing and asked her to marry me. And she agreed. And that was that. So we made plans that we'd get married in the September of 1959 when I was going to be starting law school. And I left Ajax Ironworks in June of 59 and went back to Tulsa and spent the summer there kind of getting ready to go to law school and get married. And on September 11th, 1959, Katie and I got married in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the First Presbyterian Church. And that was on a Saturday. And my law school classes started on Monday. So, once again, I lock, stock, and barrel moved up to Boulder, Colorado, Katie with me, and we found a place to stay. And our honeymoon was in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, believe it or not. But anyway, I started law school in the fall of 1959. Law school is usually 3 years. I graduated in 2.5. I think I did pretty well. And I took the bar exam in the spring of 1962. And I'd been working while I was in law school, I'd been working as a clerk in a law firm in Denver, Wellborn and Duffer, and learning how to do some of the things that a lawyer does, prepare documents and get ready for depositions and things like that. And they were very helpful to me in training me. And in March of '62, I took the Colorado bar exam because I was qualified to do that now with a law degree. And about 6 weeks later, Phil Dufford, one of the partners in the firm, called me on the phone and said, "Dick, come on, I've got something to talk to you about." And I thought, oh God, bad news about the bar exam. And I go in there and he said, "Dick, we're proud that you passed the bar exam." And he said, "You made the highest score of anybody for the last 25 years. And our records don't go back any further than that, so we don't know. But you really got a good score in the bar exam, and we're proud of you." And so I went to work full-time as a lawyer with Wellborn and Duffer in Denver. And in April of '62, our first child was born, our son Eric, on April 14th. And that kind of kept Kate busy, although she was still working at the local hospital as a nurse. She had her RN degree from Tulsa. And about a year later, I was riding the bus. I rode the bus into Boulder every day as a commuter to get to the law firm where I was working. And I read the Wall Street Journal when I did that. And I read an ad in the Wall Street Journal one day. It basically said, law firm available, owner wants to retire, and very reasonable terms and a phone number. So I called the phone number. And it's a guy by the name of Harold Merrick. And he's a lawyer in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Now, anybody knows where Ridgefield, Connecticut is. I did because it was fairly close to Peach Lake where I spent my summers. And it's just a really darling little town. And I thought, boy, if I can have my own practice there and do it my way, and we can live in that lovely little town, let's do it. So I talked to Kay about it, and finally convinced her that this was possibly a good idea. And so we, lock, stock, and barrel, moved from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Corry, Pennsylvania, and I started working in Harold Merrick's firm, which was just him. It wasn't a firm, it was just him. And things didn't go so well. And he really screwed me. He didn't intend to retire. He didn't intend to turn the firm over to me. He didn't intend to pay me much. I was starving to death and didn't have any money to take care of Katie and the family. And in the fall of 1963, our second child was born, Amy, daughter Amy. And boy, that put the pressure on me. And I lived out until about January of 1964. And I said, it's enough and enough. And I tearfully went to Katie and said, this is not working. We've got to get out of here. So what I did is I called the dean of the law school where I had gone. And I said, Dean King, here's my plight. Can you help me find a job as a lawyer in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Now, he's in Boulder, but he was a very knowledgeable attorney when he was practicing and had become the dean. And he said, Dick, you've got a good record. I will find you a job. So about 2 days later, he called me and he said, Dick, I've got you a job at Houston, Klein & Davidson, the biggest law firm in Tulsa. And they want you to get there as quickly as possible. So I called Joe Houston, who was the senior partner of the firm, and said, Joe, I'd like to work with you folks. Can I move down there from Ridgeville, Connecticut, and become a junior partner in your firm? And he said, yes, come right ahead. We'll make a position available for you. So in the spring of 1964, we packed up lock, stock, and barrel and moved back to Tulsa. And I went to work at Houston, Klein & Davidson. And they originally put me in the litigation department. And they had a contract with a very large insurance company that covered all of the doctors, all the medical doctors in Oklahoma for liability, malpractice, if you will. And so any doctor that got sued in Oklahoma for malpractice, Houston, Klein & Davidson provided their defense. And I was working in that area of the firm. And boy, I learned how to get to the courthouse and how to file documents and how to plead to a judge in a hurry. Because they really threw the whole kit and caboodle at me for practicing law. And I thought I was doing pretty well. But after about 2 years in the litigation department, Bob Davidson, one of the other senior partners of the firm, came to me. He said, Dick, we're going to move you to the corporation and oil and gas department. With your background, experience, and you're doing so well as an attorney, we think you can do better for the firm in that department than in a litigation. So that's what they did. And they moved me to the oil and gas department, and I started working for a number of clients that they had aboard. Service Drilling was one of them, owned by Ed Smith. Fag Engineering, owned by Leo Fag. Flint Steel, owned by Charlie Ganaway. I was responsible for about 6 or 7 of their major clients in the oil and manufacturing department. And it really kept me busy, and I learned a lot, especially about the oil and gas business from Ed Smith. Service Drilling was an integrated, independent oil company. It had its own drilling rigs, it had its own production, it drilled its own wells, and was very experienced They had their own geologist. So one day, Ed Smith came to me and he said, Dick, he said, we're going to drill a well up there near Medford, Oklahoma, and we think it's a sure shot, and you ought to take a position in it for us, because I think you need to get your feet wet in the oil business. So I hemmed and hawed, and I went to Joe Houston, the senior partner in the law firm, and said, you know, Joe, this is what Ed Smith proposes to me, is to participate in this well up near Medford. And Joe says, oh, Dick, he said, I went in one of those wells once, it was a dry hole, lost all my money. You don't want to do that. Well, I made my own decision, and I did it my way. I went ahead and got involved in that well with service drilling, and it was a successful well and produced oil and gas for about 15 years, and I made a lot of money out of it. So that was a good decision, and I did it my way. And about 1969 or 70, I decided, I've been working for Houston Klein Davidson, but I want to have my own firm. I want to do it my way. So I gave a notice and opened my own law office in downtown Tulsa. And strangely enough, Charlie Ganaway of Flint Steel, Ed Smith, Service Drilling Company, Leo Fagg of Fagg Engineering, and 3 or 4 other clients of Houston Klein Davidson all moved over to me, to my office, as a new attorney. And I immediately was what I call profitable. And so I was really pleased that my decision to move and open my own office was successful. And about 6 months later, I was having lunch with another young lawyer in Tulsa by the name of Pat Waddell. And Pat was working for a big firm, and he was wanting to leave too. And we got to talking, and we decided what we would do is form a partnership and practice law together. Sonberg and Waddell. And we did that for 45 years in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was very successful, and we were very happy about doing that. Early in the 1970s, there was an ad in the Tulsa morning paper one morning when I was eating breakfast. Baseball team for sale, $1, with a phone number. I thought, what the hell is going on here? So I called the number, and the person at the other end was A. Ray Smith, who I didn't really know, but I knew he owned the team. And I said, hey Ray, what are you doing selling your team for $1? And he said, well, Dick, he said, I'm basically out of money and I'm having trouble with the county about the stadium and I need some help. And I said, I'll find the help for you, A. Ray. I put together a group of 5 other people, plus myself, 6 of us, and we all bought shares in the Tulsa Oilers and kept them alive in Tulsa. And enjoyed being part of a professional baseball team for a number of years. And that was fun and exciting, and I think it did a good decision by myself to go ahead and do that. Now, in the mid-1970s, a doctor in Tulsa called me. I had represented him in a malpractice case and won it successfully for him while I was at Houston Klein Davidson. And I really wasn't doing litigation work anymore. But he called me and he said, I've got some friends, doctor friends up in New York City that have been investing with an oil company here in Tulsa. And they think they're getting screwed and they want somebody to look at it and see what's going on. So I said, bring them down here and I'll meet with them and then I'll go from there. And so the 5 doctors came down and we met in my conference room And the name of the company was Homestake Production Company, owned and operated by Bob Trippett. Well, Bob was running a Ponzi scheme. He was getting money in one year and paying a little bit back from the prior year money instead of drilling wells, and there really was very little production or even operating wells in Homestake Production Company. It was a real Ponzi scheme. And I uncovered that very quickly and filed a big lawsuit and put him into bankruptcy. And that was the end of Homestake Production Company. And it kind of got spread on the front of the paper about what had happened. And lo and behold, another group of people called me and said they've been investing with a guy by the name of D.L. McDaniel, and they thought they were getting the same treatment. So I checked out D.L. McDaniel, and he was an oil operator in Tulsa, and yes, he was running a Ponzi scheme. So I put him out of business too. And frankly, I've been, the rest of my career, I was very proud of what I did in those two cases because I was not a litigator, but I knew what the oil business was all about, and I wasn't let a guy destroy it by doing something what Ponzi scheme was all about. So I moved on and was still involved with Tulsa Oilers, and in 1982, I think it was, A. Ray Smith called me and he said, "Dick, we got a real problem. The stadium here in Tulsa that we play our games in is falling apart. It's owned by the county. It was built back in the WPA days in the 30s. It's wooden. It's falling apart. Somebody's going to get killed there if we continue to put people in the stands." So we found a way out. We moved the Tulsa Oilers to New Orleans and played in the Superdome. We were the first professional baseball team to play in the Superdome. And we played there 1 year, and it was very successful, but it was not good for baseball. Superdome was for football, and it was difficult to play baseball games there. So we looked around, and we found that there was an open stadium in Louisville, Kentucky. That was a very nice stadium, and they were very hospitable to us moving the team to Louisville, which we did, and it became the most successful, profitable minor league baseball team in history. We made a lot of money out of it, and got all of the prior losses that we'd had in our prior years back, and got even. And then the city fathers of Louisville came to us, and they made us an offer to buy the team. An offer we couldn't refuse, so we sold it. And that was the end of my professional baseball career. Okay, well, I'm up to 1990. And I forgot to tell you, in 1980, I made another decision, probably over the voice of my wife, Katie. Moved the family to Hilton Head in 1980. We bought a house in Sea Pines on Caligoby Cay, where we lived for 45 years. And we ensconced in Tulsa, in Hilton Head instead of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I commuted a lot to Tulsa to still practice law. But I was very happy here in Hilton Head. Played a lot of tennis, and in 1990, I learned that a business down in South Beach Marina in Sea Pines was for sale, a boat rental business. The young couple who owned it, Jim and Eve Harkins, were getting a divorce and they needed to sell the business. So I worked out a deal with them, and I bought Island Water Sports, and we operated out of South Beach Marina in 1990. And then over the winter of 1990 and 91, I looked around and I got a franchise to also operate boat rental business at Harbortown, Shoulder Cove, and docks out by Hudson's Restaurant in North End. So we became the largest boat rental business on the island, and it was very, very active and very time consuming. I had my 3 children working in it. Katie worked in it. I had 4 teenage grandchildren working in it. I hired a full-time mechanic who moved down here from Rhode Island. It was a big operation, and we made money, and it was a successful operation. And I ran that until about 2002, I think, is when we sold it to Bob Gossett of the Soldiers Club. No, I'm sorry, it was 2012. We ran it for about 20 years. And all my grandkids were moving away for other jobs and losing my employees. So I had to do something. So when Bob Gossett made me a very good offer, I accepted it. And I was very active in tennis here in the island. I basically implemented a strong USTA program here. I started the men's senior interclub tennis league on the island, and it ended up with about 16 different clubs providing teams in that league. And I ran for 10 years. I did scheduling, I kept all the scores, and it was a very active league. And I played on the team in Sea Pines. We won the state championship 3 times and regional once. This is in USTA. So I had a pretty good career in tennis, which was one of the reasons I wanted to move to Hilton. And one of the other activities I was involved in when I owned Island Water Sports was dredging. The marinas on Hilton Head Island, the water that comes in every day from the tide drops out silt from the water as it goes down to low tide. And eventually the marinas get filled in with this sludge, so it's impossible to run boats in and out of there. So I got involved and started the Island Dredging Association and ran that for about 10 years and fought with the Department of DFW to try to get a permit to dredge, and they were very reluctant to give it to me. We finally got it at the end of my ownership of Island Water Sports, and it turned out, you know, the environmentalists fought us on doing the dredging. They thought that if we pumped the spoils out of the basin of the marinas and pumped it out into the sound, that we would destroy the environment for the fish. Well, nothing further from the truth could have been true. When we finally got the permit and pumped the spoils out there, the fish loved it because it had all the nutrients in it. So the environmentalists were wrong and we were right. And that was the end of my career in water sports and dredging, that I finally got that permit. And so, in 2011, I retired from the practice of law in Tulsa and settled out here on Hilton Head. And in January of 2016, Katie and I moved to Tide Point. And since then, I haven't had too much opportunity to do it my way, except riding my recumbent bike around with my flags flying. And many of you probably have seen that. But we love living here, and I appreciate y'all coming to hear my story, which is a little different than a lot of the stories you'll hear from the podium here. And I appreciate that opportunity to present it to you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Oh, okay. So
Have
enough.
any questions? Questions?
Why Colorado?
Well, it just seemed like a good law school to go to. I thought it would be a good place to live. And so that's why I chose the University of Colorado. I didn't want to go to a big law school like Harvard or something like that.
Did you apply at others or just?
No, I just applied to the University of Colorado and was accepted within weeks after I did. So, but I had taken the law school entrance exam and they knew what I did on that. So it wasn't a real problem.
Any other questions?
When you were involved with the Louisville baseball team, weren't you involved with the St. Louis Cardinals? Wasn't there a connection?
Oh yeah, it was their AAA team that originally I was a part of. It was the AAA team that originally was in Tulsa, where I started out with it. And we had moved it to New Orleans for 1 year, and then we moved it to Louisville. So it was still a AAA team for the St. Louis Cardinals.
And did you rub elbows with Stan Musial and all those favorite people?
We had a diamond dinner every year when we ran the team in Tulsa, and all those former stars came to the diamond dinner, and I met all of them. And I've got baseballs signed by all of those guys. It was just a marvelous, marvelous situation. I loved it.
Okay, that's good.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever have anything to do with the Indian problem in Tulsa and all of the oil and gas problems that the United States government had to deal with in Oklahoma?
Not really. There's not much federal involvement in oil and gas in Oklahoma. It's all state-owned and or owned by the Indian tribes.
Right.
And
You know,
the Indian tribes get along pretty well with the state, and we never had any problems.
the history was that they moved the Indians up to the hill to get them away from the oil and gas, only to find out that the oil and gas was right where they moved the Indians. So suddenly, the United States government had a problem.
Okay, ma'am.
That's the gospel.
I didn't get involved in that.
My relatives lived in Bartlesville, so I know that story.
Yeah, well, we